Welcome back to the Restaurant Technology Guys podcast. We thank you guys out there in the internet universe that tune in and listen to what we got going on. Today, we're going to take a pretty cool journey. We're going to talk with a guest a little bit about what he's done in the past, and then kind of where it's tying into restaurants and how they're doing it. So, before I get too far into it, I guess first and foremost, I know that you guys have got lots of choices, so we appreciate you guys spending some time with us each and every week. Matthew, from Evocalize, founder, CEO, you want to talk a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your history, and then we can talk a little bit about what you guys are trying to do to impact restaurants and how we even got connected, because I'm excited to share your story with the rest of the world.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Super excited to be on, and appreciate you having me on to riff about like restaurant and restaurant technology and the things folks are facing today. You know, I've done a number of things in my career. I started out as a software engineer and ended up in strategy consulting and private equity, and then participated in the IPO of our last marketing software technology back, gosh, almost 10 years ago. And now we've been busy building our company, Evocalize. I'm the founder and CEO of Evocalize for the past, gosh, about 8 years. Yeah, fired up to talk about the problems restaurateurs are facing and operators are facing in the space today. And hopefully talk about some cool things that'll be solutions.
I love it. I love it. And I know you didn't start in restaurants. So why don't you give a little backstory of kind of where you guys came from? I know it wasn't, you didn't set your sights on, we're going to take on the restaurant world, but you do see a problem there. And we can talk a little bit about kind of the history of where you guys came from and why you thought restaurants was a fantastic vertical that needs a solution like what you guys have.
Yeah, thanks. You're right. We actually started in residential real estate. And so, we actually didn't even set out to start in residential real estate. We just started with the problem, right? And the problem we set out to solve, like today, if you look at the marketing landscape, local businesses in particular, when they're talking about generating demand, like generating real demand, we're not talking about social posting or reviews or any of that stuff, all valuable pieces of a marketing puzzle. How do you bring people into the restaurant, into the store? How do I get people to buy and sell homes, that are going on market or on market, right? And so if you rewind time, a lot of that marketing is done with people hands and on keyboard, pressing buttons in the Facebooks and Googles and TikToks and everywhere else, right? And so we set out almost a decade ago after taking our last company public with the goal of like, how do we automate that, right? So how do we take the massive amounts of data that are being thrown off from businesses and locations in particular, like point of sale data and lots of other data, and how do we turn that into marketing that actually brings results? So we ended up, we took our first venture capital round out of the largest venture capital fund in the Pacific Northwest at a Seattle Madrona Venture Group. And so we hired a bunch of folks from Amazon, and we went to work with one of their portfolio companies at the time, Redfin, and wired in a bunch of data together, worked with their data scientists and data engineers, and basically developed a pretty sophisticated way to take a lot of this moving, changing data in the real estate world. So think about a home listing. If you've surfed on Realtor.com or Zillow or Redfin or any of the major real estate portals, you see all the data that these folks have, crime data and school data and listing location and imagery, lots of other data underneath the cover, sales data, et cetera. So all that we ingested into our technology every day and started making decisions at a pretty mass scale in order to match homes with buyers and sellers across the industry. And then fast forward to today, we're pretty large percentage of marketing in the residential real estate space flows through our technology in one way or the other. But this problem is not one that's unique to real estate, right? Yep. It's the corporate partner has kind of central partner has a bunch of data, and they have like a bunch of knowledge on how to market. They have, sometimes agencies that are creative agencies and agencies that are feeding lots of great polished creative, but we know local marketing works better. Right. And so we set out to basically bridge that gap. And so how do we equip the franchise location or the local office with the ability to run these really data-driven, complicated demand generation programs to bring real results without having to know how the heck to do it or have all the data to make it happen. So the little more than I wanted to go, but that's effectively what we're doing now. Is we're moving and making a big bet in restaurants because we feel like there's such a big opportunity here to free the franchisee, from giving them the power to push a button and have people come in when they're needed, or even automate that thing fully based on their sales data, their inventory data, and all the other cool stuff that goes on at the location level.
Well, and I know, Matt, when we talked previously, like the whole idea of local, like one of the things, I mean, and longtime listeners know, I just bought a home. I just moved to Texas a couple of years ago. I was one of those transplants from the West Coast, came to Texas. I know that you spend part of the time in Texas. And so there's a lot of business advantages and a lot of personal advantages to living in Texas. And so I moved, but the local aspect of it, same thing with restaurants. I'm oftentimes not going to look for a restaurant that's 40 or 50 or 60 miles away unless I'm looking for a specific destination or I'm looking for some type of cuisine that I can't find locally. So I love when you and I talked previously about tying kind of my needs, requirements, where do I like to go, and the data that goes along with that with something local. We know whether it's, restaurants, churches, convenience stores, drugstores, grocery stores, the more localized you can get, the more you can drive that behavior if you're where the demand needs to be and wants to be. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I think it's an interesting paradigm where people in restaurants don't understand how much that data is important to them.
Yeah, I mean, modern digital marketing, e-commerce kind of leads the way here in terms of sophistication. They're usually the point of the spear in terms of like industries and using data, because it's so cutthroat, right? And Amazon kind of maybe sets up that landscape for everyone, but data is everything in terms of having effective, cost-effective digital marketing that reaches the target audience. Okay, that's like a broad statement that I'm sure lots of folks listening will say, yeah, whatever, Matt. Like everyone knows that, right? True. But when you compound that with the events and local information going on at the local level, right? You take not only data that you have at a store level. So again, I always talk about inventory and sales data because to me, those two things are fundamental to the local operation, right? We take that with events that are going on around the particular location, right? Like we have a restaurant partner in the Mid-Atlantic that we're triggering events, specific marketing promotions when the local team wins football games, right? So we can take advantage of things like weather data, local event information, right? Sales trends, history, point of sale data, inventory data, and that stuff makes, just independent of us, like that stuff makes a real difference. We see 30% to 50% increases in performance across our client base. We have more than 1 million businesses using our tech now. So it's like significant 30 to 50% increases in performance just by making your messaging and your creative and your all of your marketing local, right? And putting the local flair of the local restaurant into it, because we're still a neighborhood-based society, right? And so we resonate with the store down the road, not always just the corporate branding that's thrown out in generic.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you to double click a little bit, Matt, on the whole idea. You talk about e-commerce kind of leading the charge, and restaurants oftentimes are laggards as it relates to, part of even where this show came from was trying to get people to be aware of people like you guys, because I talk to people in restaurants and they're like, nah, that's not for real. And then I'm like, no, I like have people that are doing this kind of stuff all the time. But e-commerce has been leading the charge because they've oftentimes known who the customer was because you logged in. When I was searching for homes on Zillow, I bought my home two years ago this week, and when at the time of this recording, and I'm still getting advertised for homes from Zillow that are in the neighborhoods that I was looking in when I bought. This house became available on the market. So they knew who I was. They know what my price point was. They knew what I was looking for. I gave them much of that data to allow them the opportunity to do that. Restaurants struggle there. They don't have the opportunity often to do that. Talk to me a little bit about, I mean, I understand why e-commerce is there and why they've gotten there. And I think for our audience, help educate them on how brands like yourself and others are capturing that data, because so much of it's becoming more readily available as tech is starting to converge, where I actually know who Jeremy is and that he's in this demographic with this amount of kids and eats pizza every Friday night. And I need to go move him from this pizza place to that pizza place. Oftentimes our restaurateurs go, you're full of crap. They don't really have that data to be able to talk to these people. So I'm going to let you riff on that for just a few minutes, because I think it's informative for people to understand how much is out there and how much the data can actually move the needle.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry, I know I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I think it's important for people to understand.
No, it's fantastic. I mean, I think, just figuring out where to start. The platforms themselves have an astounding amount of data, and I think sometimes so much that the governmental entities get nervous about them, right? And people get anxious about it, but they know a tremendous amount about folks. So what we try to do, we think about the world. Let me put it this way: in marketing, in two halves. We split the universe of like audience, known customers and unknown customers, right? And so when you go to Zillow, you're kind of existing in the middle ground, but we treat you as a known customer because you're poking around Zillow and you're searching for homes. And so we start to pick up, and we do work with a lot of the real estate portals driving their marketing, start to pick up signals about what you're interested in, where. So what bed bath you're interested in, and that's called remarketing. Those are remarketing signals where we're picking up and learning about you based on your activities on the first party website, the website that you're on in that moment. So that's one group of data. The other group of data is unknown customers, is your CRM database, your loyalty database, the folks who have expressly said, hey, I'm a fan of your location, right? I'm a fan of your business, right? I'm signing up expressly to give you my information, right? And so those people are known customers by identity, right? So we know people here just because we know their attributes and what they're looking for. We know people here because they're in a database. Those two are known customers. We can market to them, right? So we want them to come back in. We want them to be influencers. Those are both pretty easy, right? We set up automated programs and we can trigger promotions to them. But the more important part to me about those groups of people is that, and this is true in every industry, and e-commerce just figured it out sooner, right? We can use those people to build models of ideal customers that are dynamic, that we then go and try and find those users based on everything that Google and Meta and TikTok and all the other platforms know about you, right? So we can go find people based on lookalike modeling from your existing customers and your best customers and new customers. And then we can work on incrementality. So how in your restaurant location do we run programs and promotions to just the incremental new customer who want to bring you in for the first time? We're paying for you through a promotion if we offer a promotion, right?
Yep.
So we don't necessarily want to just give that to our existing customers. Maybe you want to just do the incremental customers. So we bring them in, and then so those two become kind of a yin and yang of digital marketing, the known customer sets and the unknown customer sets or prospects that we're trying to pull in. And again, both of them, the platforms know who's in your family.
Yep.
They know what you've searched for recently. They know
where you're traveling to,
where you're traveling to. Yes. So the lookalike models, last time I checked, had thousands of attributes in them, and they're incredibly predictive. So even if you aren't, and this is what prompts people to sometimes say, hey, I know one of these platforms is listening to my phone, and it's like, well, actually they're not. In order to get certified as partners, we actually had to sign an affidavit with some of them saying, we're not doing that, right? So they're not, but they're so predictive, it feels like they are, right?
Well, oftentimes we give it to them. I was just watching.
Yes.
I mean, this came up this morning, and I'll say it for the benefit of our audience. We're considering taking on another line of business. Somebody sent me a YouTube video about that line of business, and it was an internal education video, not publicly listed on YouTube. And I sent it to our leadership team and said, watch this for 45 minutes and see if this is something that we want to do like this partner. We're not going to compete with them. They're in a different state. And within 2 days, people had in their Instagram feed and in their Facebook feed stuff that was related to that, because we've given them that data. It's not that they're listening; they're watching the web activity. I tell people the funny story, and you'll probably chuckle about this because you live in this world. I went away with my kid to a college visit, and he forgot to turn in a homework assignment. Recognized he forgot it, but he didn't bring his laptop. He only had his phone. So he said, "Dad, can I jump on your laptop real quick? I'm going to go on Google, go submit my paper to my teacher, whatever." And he had logged out of my profile and then and logged into his. And then I got my laptop back and I'm like, "What did you do to my laptop? What happened?" Everything is different because my Chrome windows weren't anywhere close to what I wanted. We don't like it when they don't give it to us. When I accidentally log into my wife's Amazon and I get a bunch of her crap, like it bugs me, even though we're on the same account. Yeah. I don't want all of this stuff. I don't need dresses. I need the stuff that's relevant to me. And at the same time, like people, the government's always spying on us and looking at these things. At the end of the day, you're signaling to them that you're going to be doing this. And so how do brands take advantage of that to help drive incrementation and or discovery of brands that my family loves Indian food. We're moved to Texas, not the same kind of Indian food as we have in California. Trying to find a good Indian restaurant. If the Indian restaurants are out there and they know that I'm looking for Indian food, why not figure out how to get to me? So I guess talk to me a little bit about how brands are using that data in a ethical way to drive discovery and to drive behavior from guests and potential guests that they didn't have before.
Yeah, you're so right, Jeremy. I mean, just like I mentioned, businesses throw off data, and those are the signals we pick up and use, through technology for kind of automatic marketing. But people throw off data too, right? Like you're throwing off signals all day long, every day, right? And the people around you are throwing off signals, and so those things are being picked up by all of the channels. And frankly, that can be scary, and there are privacy controls. You can go in and adjust a bunch of those things in the platforms. They've been mandated, so they're a little hidden, so you have to dig for them a little bit. But from a personal perspective, I don't personally mind it a whole lot, as long as I have the control, because to your point, I have goods and services that discover me.
Yep.
That I want, right?
Yes.
And so I'm an avid backpacker. I love backpacking and going through like 50, 100 mile, backpacking trips, through the PCT and other areas, right? And I'm like spend way too much money on, cottage gear and backpacks and trying to shave off another ounce.
Yeah, ultralight tents. I get it. We'll have to riff after the show, and I can talk to you about my John Muir Trail, 6 days on the JMT about 7 years ago. So we can talk about that later.
I haven't done JMT yet, but I'd love to talk about it. But I love it when new gear finds me. And so when my interests are known and there are things that I can control, if I don't want to be known for this, I can turn it off. For a business, that's super valuable, right? Because not only we want to be places where folks have high intent, right? Meaning I want to go to dinner right now or next week, or to your point, like, man, I'm hungry for Indian food. Like, what can I find around me? So that's Google Maps, Google Search, some of the specific restaurant spots like, Uber Eats and others, right, there. So we want to be there, right? So that's an important place to be. But how do you place the intent? How do you create the intent? Yes. Well, it's through this serendipity that I talk about, where you're using the right data, instructing the platforms to match it against the people that are likely to want to come in, in the next day or week or month, right? And to pull them in when they otherwise wouldn't have come. And so it's kind of like Inception. I think about it, like the movie Inception, like we're planting the seed that sparks the desire to come into the restaurant. And by the way, it takes multiple touches in multiple channels. There's a bunch of research in the e-commerce space that it takes 15 to 18 touches across platforms for a given customer in order to get them to buy a product, right? Yeah. And so, so you have to be we talk about locally omnipresent, and it doesn't have to cost a ton of money if you're doing it the right way. It can be really efficient cost-wise, but it can really drive your business.
Well, talk to me a little bit about so there's a whole bunch of thoughts I have on it, Matt. And the first thing is you were in the real estate space. Real estate is a once every 7 to 10 year activity. Restaurants are not. They are weekly, they are daily for a lot of people. They're multiple times a day for a lot of people. I guess, how has the paradigm had to shift for you, your team, going from real estate where I might be buying a new home every 7 years to buying pizza from this brand or that brand Tuesday? Talk to me a little bit about how you guys normalize that, and the, I guess, just even the different frame of mind, because it sounds like it. I mean, to me, it seems like they're just different. They're different ways to have to go skin the same onion.
Yeah, I mean, I think the cost per purchase is pretty different, right? So what you spend, so the economics of the consumer are
Hmm.
different.
Yep.
When you're making $20 versus you're making two hundred
Tens of
thousand
thousands,
dollars,
hundred
right, or
thousands. Yeah.
$20,000, right? So the economics are different, but at a unit level, really, the marketing, and at a tactical level, the marketing is very much the same. The real estate companies are all trying to transitioning into a life cycle marketing mode, and that may be why you continue to get marketing from Zillow after you had sold. There's some delay in the home industry of, like, there was actually a transaction, and that there's some footing of that has to take place. But frankly, a lot of the brokerages and agents out there are starting to life cycle market, because they don't want to one and done. They want to
Mhm.
maintain the best teams and real estate agents in real estate maintain a relationship with customers, and they're digitally present. So
The first three homes
so
that I
there's
bought from the same person in
and
California.
you're rare. You're super rare, right? Because I think it's like the stats say it's a 90-10 rule, where
Oh, wow.
90% of the folks do not buy more than once from the same realtor,
Agent?
right?
Interesting. I bought from a different agent here in Texas because they weren't licensed. I
Yeah.
tried to get my loan from the same person, but they weren't licensed in Texas. The person that was servicing my home loan in Southern California. And fortunately, he gave me somebody that was good here, and they got a service. But that's ironic. I wouldn't have considered that because of my own personal experience.
Yeah, and that's loyalty, right? And
Hmm.
so that's what we strive for
Yep.
across industries, right? It's independent of industry, it crosses industries, right? Whether we have lots of mortgage partners and insurance partners and of course real estate firms and some restaurants, as we're spinning up in the restaurant industry. Loyalty is the same
Yep.
across these industries. It's just in some cases, like real estate, it's more difficult because you have to create a reason to interact.
Hmm.
Probably everyone on this call has gotten local market statistics emails, right, for your
Yes.
local home or your home
Or the door
valuation.
hangers. Well, all these homes sold in these neighborhoods. That's super local. Right?
Totally. I mean, that's the example or the parallel to your local restaurant, your location sending out marketing on an every week basis, right? Always having something running, and then always having the promotion, the digital promotion, and pulling people in. That's the equivalent, because the cycles are much shorter
Hmm.
in restaurants, but the concept is the same, right? We want to maintain a connection with the customer so they don't go to the next competitive restaurant around the corner. They think of me first. My kids think of the Subway when they drive down the street every time, because Subway's in front of them with local marketing in TikTok, right?
Yep.
And my daughter has ordered from our partner Smoothie King out of TikTok online ordering. So the TikToks from the local Smoothie King restaurant came to her, and she was 15 at the time, and clicked the button, and they delivered the smoothies to the house, right?
Oh,
And
wow.
so the whole world is changing around this, and we have to be digitally present at our
Hmm.
local level so that folks are always thinking about us all the time.
I
I would
love
say
that.
it's more important in restaurants, even with the shorter cycle times, than it is in real estate.
Well, and the amount of competition that's there is greater than it ever has been.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, and one of the things I often say on this is, if you're not doing it, I promise you your competitors are figuring out a way to do it. And so, before we talk a little bit about the franchise model, because I love that you guys are getting down to not just, oh, I'm selling Smoothie King, and they do, their 2,000 stores or whatever they are, or 800 stores, whatever the number is. You're going to the local guy and helping with that. Talk to me a little bit about attribution, and even this whole idea, like, the big buzzword in restaurants right now is CDP. And there's a lot of misnomer about CDP, and you being from, the e-commerce world, and even, previous, you probably chuckle because you're like, yeah, that we've been doing this forever on that side, but restaurants are finally getting around to it. Historically, restaurants marketing was, I'm going to place an ad, I'm going to hope somebody comes in, And I'm only going to look at it and say, did traffic go up or traffic go down? Did sales go up or sales go down? I would do these LTOs 2 or 3 times a year and hope that I got the McRib sold enough to make up for the campaigns that I did. And they didn't really have any idea. So talk to me a little bit about your vision on CDP for restaurants, because again, tying e-commerce to brick and mortar sales is getting easier and easier, but it's not there completely.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, to continue your like, kind of riff on the way things have been in restaurants, right? Like we're targeting DMA level and like broad messaging and like, great, your brand mark is in front of, and meanwhile, me as a franchisee, I'm paying market development funds. Like I'm funding that. And I'm saying like, what did it do for me? Right?
It did nothing.
What is that? What is that actually doing? Right?
Yeah.
Like, give
or
me
they marketed a strawberry smoothie to me, and I'm allergic to strawberries, and I've never ordered a strawberry smoothie ever. But that's the new thing that corporate came up with. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but
totally.
I hate it.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you, right? And like that's what we can get away from. I'll talk about CDPs in a minute because they're really important, right? But like that's what we're trying to get away from, right? Which is give the local franchisee who depends on, it's their livelihood, who depends on the business to come in every day to the store. They're paying for staff, they're paying for ingredients, they have spoilage concerns, right? When we have excess kale, we need to liquidate, we need to run kale smoothie promotions and get people to come in the store and walk out with a kale smoothie. Otherwise that kale is going to spoil. That's a real world concern at the franchise level. And no amount of DMA level marketing and brand marketing through my market development funds are going to do anything for that. Right. So I get all like, you can tell
I love it because I think it's something that people look to every day. Back in the old days, before there was chains, the fish special got written on the chalkboard at the front of the dine-in restaurant because you knew that you had to kill the salmon off or it was going to go bad in the next 2 days. And so you're doing that, but broadcasting it to an audience of 10,000 people to hope to get 100 people to come in and order that, order the kale to get rid of the kale for that period or whatever the time frame is.
Yeah, totally. I mean, again, that's what franchisees have told us they want, right? Stop spending my money. I mean, there's some amount of brand national marketing that works as a part of a full funnel strategy, but like, give me the visibility to know where my dollars are working and where they're not and what to do with them, right? And make it easy so I don't have to spend much time trying to figure out how to become a marketing expert. Like that's what the franchisees tell us. And that's what we're hearing. Same thing we heard in the other industries, right? So CDPs. CDPs have been a pretty big thing for the last 5-6 years, as you mentioned, in e-com and in, we've worked in the airlines and travel industry, some, and so they've been pretty widely deployed there. Venture capitalist has an investment in some CDP technology, and so we're pretty close to it all. We also integrate pretty tightly in a lot of industries with CDPs. So if you think about, like, again, we're the activation of your data.
Yep.
CDPs are the collection of your data. So CDPs are, how do I take this data that's kind of hard to work with before and siloed in different systems, and how do I pull it together in one place so it's actionable? Yep. CDPs are merged in e-com and travel and some other industries for the first use cases were email marketing, right? So it's like, okay, great. Now I pulled all my customers together and I can segregate them into different slices, and now I can email them in different ways. Great, right? Like email has a definite place in the puzzle. But so does reaching people in platforms where they're spending the most of their time. Because if you're trying to reach a demographic that's younger than 30, they're not spending a whole lot of time in their email every day, right?
Believe me. Yeah, I've got teenage kids, as do you, and it's like, I'm like, have you seen the last 4 emails I've sent you? And they look at me and go, Dad, just send me a text or send me a Snapchat. I'm like, I want to punch you in your head, kid. So sorry, I didn't mean to, but we know it. And unfortunately, brands are not thinking about that because they're run by people that are our age and older. So sorry, I'll let you keep going.
No, man, I have the gray hair, so I'm a part of the club. But I'm trying not to be a part of the problem. So so email has its place, but CDPs are bigger than that. Really, it's like it's a clearing ground. It's a nice starting point for, like, I think about it like and this is a super environmentally friendly example, but I think about they're the oil, right? And so you're like refining the oil and getting it set up in tanks and right. And it's like, okay, but that doesn't make me any money yet. Yep. Right. So it's good. It's a necessary, but not sufficient part of my marketing strategy. Then it's okay. What do I do with it? Email is one activation. and we take instruction. We take part of our data streams. Part of our data streams are from point of sales. Part of our data streams are from loyalty. Part of our data streams are from inventory systems. Part of our data streams can be from CDPs to go and find new people that actually make you money at the end of the day. Because, but CDPs are definitely, I mean, they're a foundational bit to your core infrastructure. There are 3 or 4 of them, the technology bits that you have to kind of have, and you want to choose the right partners that have an open ecosystem where they have APIs and they have ways to integrate, so it's easy. They're either pre-integrated or they have ways to integrate your data to them and get your data out.
So that you can have a campaign that goes out and drives the kale smoothie to drive that behavior.
That's right.
I love
That's
it.
right.
Matt, I'm going to ask you to riff a little bit. I'm going to ask you to boast a little bit about what you guys are doing, because I think the whole local concept and giving the tools to the franchisee to both build campaigns that are automated, because I think there's some that you guys do that makes their life easier. Because if it's really a tool, and I've heard this too many times, that they have to go into the office or they have to go create this whole thing, and they go get the LTO from corporate and they put it into this tool, and it just doesn't end up happening. And then they're pissed because it didn't work, or they're spending all of this money on their market MDF funds and the marketing development funds, and it's going 2% of their sales is going off to corporate. And they don't know where it's going. Talk to me a little bit about how you're making restaurateurs' lives easier to drive the traffic that they want and need in order to continue to thrive and continue to grow and continue to support their family and such.
Yeah, totally. So again, I love the way you ended that with support their family, and like that's really what it is at the local level, right? And so again, that's why I get back to where I got all fired up earlier on transparency and like where are the dollars going, because I actually think it's a pretty big franchise development opportunity for franchisors to be able to give visibility and coordinate marketing with their franchisees.
Yes.
It's a transparent, so you can see where the dollars are going, you can see how they're working, you can see how you compare to the next location up the road in Plano, right, or down here in Austin, right, from where you are. And so I think, like, to me, the opportunity is not just for the franchisee, it's also for the franchisor or the corporate group to have a differentiator that, like, hey, I'm going to treat my franchisee as a partner in this thing, and I'm not going to black box their marketing dollars. I'm going to work with them together and be super transparent with them. So to get to your point about the personal nature of this and its impact on the franchisee, I mean, to me, franchisees, they want control, but they don't want to spend hours and hours a week. They can't. They don't have the time, right? And they don't want to become marketing PhD experts, right? Yep. They don't want to even understand what the hell a CDP is. Like, at a franchise level, my store location, I'm so busy, like staffing up and recruiting and, trying to get my restaurant in order and
writing schedules, ordering product, producing food, all of it. Yeah. Dealing with the landlord, right? And the leak in the roof, all of it.
Totally. So I think, the key is to any product, not just ours, right, is how do you make things either fully automated 100% or so easy that you can push a button and then just look at a report, glance at a dashboard once in a while and say, like, okay, what's it doing for me? Or just watch the turnstile coming in and what's happening kind of in the front of the restaurant. And so so to me, that's kind of the principle. We've been told very distinctly from franchisees and, frankly, practitioners at the local level across industries, we want easy and we want effective programs that are transparent. That's what we want, right? And so you can't, as a franchisee, really do that on your own, right? There are a few options that franchisees have when they're looking at these problems on their own, right? So one, this is a little bit of a quick shameless plug, and then I'll get back to like problem solving.
But honestly, at the end of the day, there's people that do what you guys do, but I think you guys have some stuff that's pretty unique that truly takes some of the friction out of what people are doing. Part of why I was excited to talk with you guys is you guys have created some level of automation. There's tools that do what you guys do, but it require you to build campaigns and do a whole bunch of work and upload a bunch of photos and all of that. You guys have taken some of that friction out, and I want you to plug what you guys are doing, because I think it's really worthwhile for people to understand what's possible today.
Yeah, well, we founded the business because the local business, again, I talked about the founding story a little bit, but the local business operator, they do one of 3 things today. They do nothing digitally, right? Or they're doing simplistic things that really, they're just checking the box, like organic social posting. again, it's fine to do, but
Yeah.
you don't really count on it to drive a bunch of business, right? At the end of the day, you're not using it as an economic engine. You're using it as kind of being active in the space, and increasingly fewer people. It's a misnomer, but fewer and fewer people are seeing those posts because the platforms are trying to make money, so they
Yep.
don't let organic propagation, show them.
Especially
And
from
people, I think,
businesses.
yeah, the
Yep.
last thing I saw from businesses was 1% of people that even follow your page, let alone other people, see those organic posts. So that's the second thing they do. Or the third, they hire an expensive kind of local agency, digital agency, that's trying to figure out what to do for them. And so those are kind of the three of the main options that folks go through. And so for us, and those local agencies don't really have access to data, right? Because they're doing pretty pictures, and they're trying to figure out, like, using channel audiences and things like that. But what we're trying to do is a little different, right? Which is, we've spent more than $30 million in 7 years building this automation ecosystem and infrastructure that wires directly into the most performant digital marketing channels. So there's not a human in the middle, right? Like the franchisee can press a button. We have safeguards around it. Data is all wired in already, and a program can launch, because some of these programs are time sensitive. You
Yeah.
can't wait for it to submit to some human desk in the Philippines, which is what most folks do in the space, and then wait for someone to like type it into Facebook. Like, it doesn't. Business moves faster than that, right? Especially if you have to update pricing, you have to update imagery, your customers changing, your inventory is changing. Like, it has to be automated. So that's one. Two, you don't want to figure out how to go from one channel to the next. You need to be in all channels, is the
Uh-huh.
answer. And that's not easy to hear if you're trying to do things manually, right? How long does it take me to go in Facebook and run marketing, and then go in Google search, and then Google discovery ads and Google display, and then let me go over to TikTok and create a TikTok reel, TikTok video, and create an Instagram reel, and then maybe I'm running something on Uber Eats or Amazon, right? And so, like, it's just too much. So what we do is the franchisor sets up ready-made programs. They can be fully automated, or they can be, some press button, make some decisions at the local level, and then the franchisee gets those in a little dashboard and can just make a few simple choices. We use machine learning. I don't want to overuse that because people get
People
it's
get
just
freaked out that
overused too
they're
much. Yeah. Yeah. So, but we use machine learning to figure out which channel to go reach people on, so you don't have to think about that. Because frankly, the audience is different in LA than it is, in Kansas City, right? Than it is in Austin. The channels you reach the consumer is different based on the type of food you have, the price of the food that you have, and so it's just really hard to make those decisions at a corporate group, let alone at a local operator. So we're just take a do it for you approach and make it like wire all the stuff in for you. And those are things that a location just can't do on their own. Like, even if you had the 30 or 40 or 50 hours to spend on trying to figure out how to do that every week, it's just like it's not the right use of your time, and you don't really have the data to make it happen.
Yep. Yeah. No, same argument that we have about point of sale. Yes, go make cheeseburgers. We'll solve your point of sale problems. You guys solve the
Totally.
marketing problems, and I'm not going to come in and tell you how to make a cheeseburger. Don't tell me how to run a point of sale company. So um, one thing that I always worry about with demand gen is too much. Restaurants are finite. Physical space is finite. Kitchens are finite. Inventory is finite. Labor is hard to come by, and we run an ad and we drive these kale smoothies, and then we don't have people to produce them. Now they got a bad guest experience. And oftentimes
Mhm.
on the show, we talk a lot about guest experience and delivering good guest experience, because at the end of the day, good guest experience brings people coming back. And when they come back, they tell their friends and such and such and such. And so talk to me a little bit about that problem. And I guess, have you guys even overcome it? Have you guys dealt with it? Talk to me a little bit about that. Even in third party, Uber Eats and Grubhub and DoorDash and such, they struggle with it from time to time too.
Mhm.
Where it's too much demand, and then it's binary. It's like we either turn it
Mhm.
off or turn it on, and it's just, again, not delivering on the guest experience. Have you guys had to overcome this yet?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a lot of what we're all about, because in order to do that, I've talked a lot about data, and you mentioned CDPs, but like, we think about inventory systems, we think about point of sale data too, right? So if you don't have access to point of sale data to orient yourself, and historical point of sale data to understand, times of day and
Throughput
days of
and
week and
yep.
trends and throughput, right? then you can't automate. Like, you have to have your people, or you, right, at the local franchise level, go, I need some more people, or like, pull back on marketing. So what we're trying to do, we give those options to folks. So if they want to press demand, they can click a button, it spawns demand. But we really more and more are doing, the franchisor will lay out a series of automations where they've already wired in inventory data, they've already wired in demand data, they've already wired in for every location, like what are the sales data look like day of week, and then so the system just automatically adapts to that and looks at when do we need to push demand and when do we not push demand, and then promotions can be triggered based on, again, other things like inventory levels and other things. But if you don't have a connection to, and that's what I talk about, these agencies are fine, right? Like, I don't want to bash agencies, they're good for like creative development, some of these things, but they don't have connection to your data, they can't do what you're talking about. You have to be connected to the pause, right? You have to, because otherwise you don't know what's going on, and you're just relying on the operator again, and they don't have time to do it.
And even if they do, again, even if they do, they don't quite understand what all of that means. And oftentimes they're even, you're absentee owner, you're on vacation, you're at the lake, and now your manager's sitting there on their hands, not driving the volume that you might need to. So, Matt, I'm going to ask you one last piece, and then we're going to wrap up because we're getting close to time. What does an engagement look like with your team? What's a brand that I'm going to call your team, I'm going to start working with your team to figure out what this looks like? What's the onboarding look like? How long does it take to get this set up? Is it like signing up for a rental car and I'm just going online and putting my name in and put my data in? I'm sure there's some level of engagement. Talk to me a little bit about what that might look like for a brand that's sitting here listening, going, what, I have to have this. Where do I go figure out how to get my kale smoothies out the door? Let me get on the phone with these guys. What can they expect when they engage with your team?
Yeah, first of all, if you have to have it tomorrow, you can email us at sales@evocalize.com. Hit us up on LinkedIn. Hit me up at matt@evocalize.com, MATT. So just to throw this, plug out there.
You should send me a check and I'll make your problem go away. But yes,
we love to partner with great brands. Obviously, it's what we're here to do. And but in terms of engagements, it can be like super turnkey, or it can be super customized. So the way, and I hate it depends answers. So, but we have a client success team that works with you, and an onboarding process and team that will work with you to look at, and we do this frankly from the conversations up front and the sales process all the way through the process. We look at, like, okay, which of these, we have some best practices, we call them blueprints, but programs that can be driven by your data, and that and we have some benchmarking data around them. So we'll come with an opinion. We're not saying, hey, tell us what to do and we'll go do it, right? We're coming with an opinion, which I feel very strongly about as a software solution provider, right? Like, come with an opinion. So we come with an opinion, and then you kind of can choose from a menu, or you can decide, hey, I want something different, right? For instance, we have some restaurant partners that we've talked a lot about sales and a lot about demand generation. We have some restaurant partners that said, we want to recruit. We want to recruit through your tool, and we want to let the local franchisees have a button that allows them to go and solicit recruiting and staffing needs. And so we've built blueprints, we've built programs that, again, are driven by data, and that allow recruiting. And so we have some kind of things that you can get off the shelf, best practices, and then we have a very, one of the strengths of our technology is the ability to very quickly modify things, because what we want to do is this is not a one size fits all deal, right? Your data is different than everyone else's data. Your brand is different than everyone else's brand. And so we want to have the system at the end of the day that your franchisees are using, or that you're using at corporate to drive local marketing, be unique to your brand. And so we've designed our whole technology to do that. So not to forget about this, the implementations are as quick as about a week and a half for pretty turnkey solutions. Wiring in a bunch of specific data that you have as a restaurant group that isn't already integrated into our system, that could take as much as 4, 5, 6 weeks.
Depends on the data, we're not talking about how easily accessible it is and all of that. And again, more so than anything, people are like, well, I heard that guy Matt and he's awesome. Now what? And I'm like, okay, get on the phone, talk to them. They'll start to understand what your needs are. And I guess I would encourage you guys all to consider rewinding by about 2 minutes to listen to Matt talk about even recruiting, because one of the biggest challenges I continue to hear from restaurants is staffing. I've been at 4 different restaurants in the last 2 weeks, 4 different corporate offices in the last 2 weeks, and they're like, staffing is our biggest challenge. And I'm thinking to myself, you guys are marketing. I see a bunch of marketing about that, but you're not marketing your jobs and your availability of those jobs. It's the same problem. It's the same getting enough traffic, enough eyeballs to see that that's available to say, yes, I want to click the link to go connect to it versus going in and ordering the kale smoothie and having it delivered to your house for your daughter. So
my 16-year-old daughter, who I just mentioned, is looking for jobs, right? And so she wants TikTok. Like, you come to her in TikTok and say, hey, she's like pretty good student, like she'd be a good employee for someone, right? And so but she doesn't know where to start, right? She doesn't go to read a sign on the side of a restaurant. She's that's not where she looks. She's living in TikTok, right? And so so anyway, I couldn't agree more. And that's actually frontier stuff. Like, we do a lot of that in other industries, but restaurants just getting started on that.
Yeah. I heard it at RLC, Restaurant Leadership Conference, and earlier this year, people were talking about it. They were saying, have you turned your marketing engine away from consumers and straight to staffing? Because you guys keep talking about this, but you've got some pent up talent in your office that has not done a good job of they'll talk about building the brand and making it sexy that people want to apply, but go do your CTA that says apply today to come work here. Go figure out what your demographic is and go after those people.
Yeah, 100%.
I love it.
So,
Matt, I truly am fascinated. I feel like I get the catbird seat to learn about all of the newest cool things that are going on. And so I'm oftentimes a student. And so thank you for sharing. I know our audience is going to just love, and many of them are going to eat this stuff up. So I would expect that you guys will get some phone calls because there's some people that are excited to do this. To our audience, guys, we know that you guys have got lots of choices. As I said, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the newsletter, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, whatever your consumption method of choices. Matt, thank you so much for your time. I'm looking forward to connecting in person, and to our audience, make it a great day.
Thanks, Jeremy.